Welcome everybody at the Arizona Real Estate Investors Association. Today we have a special guest, Mark Zinman of Zona Law. And the reason for this update is, as you know, once the members start buzzing about certain topics, social media gets out of hand, the media gets out of hand. We definitely want to bring in Mark Zinman at Zona Law, our business associate for over a decade here, well respected, well known, best eviction attorney in the state. He's going to lay down the facts and give us an update as to where we stand with squatters. So Mark, how you doing, man? Welcome.
Great. Good to see you, Mike. How you doing?
Great, man. Like I said, I always appreciate you jumping in. I know you're busy. Today we want to talk about squatters. So the headlines I'm noticing, right? White House calls squatters a local issue, but critical. They just dropped that 2 hours ago. You got Joe Rogan talking about squatting. What else we got? Alleged squatters serve $25 Shake Shack receipt to claim a $930,000 home. Then you had the gentleman that was educating illegal immigrants on how to invade homes or whatever. So there's all this wild information going on in the news as we speak. So I just wanted to clear the air, and mainly for Arizona real estate investors, right? So if you could just start off, what is a squatter? Let's keep it basic there, and we'll lead in from there.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate it. And obviously, I appreciate the disclaimer as well, because we just practice in Arizona. I'm only licensed here, so I can only talk to Arizona, even though what's going on is definitely a national issue right now. It seems like it's taken off in terms of the publicity it's getting. As you mentioned, the White House now just coming out and making statements on it as well, which is what's interesting, really, is that nothing's really changed in Arizona. I mean, everything that we're seeing is really from the national press right now and talking points on social media. Arizona laws have not changed on this point at all. The only thing I've seen that's changed immediately was Florida, which we can obviously talk about it as well.
Mhm.
But to go back to your question, is what is a squatter? I mean, in simplest form, is a person that enters and moves into a house and has no legal standing to be there. Um, they walk in door and just simply refuse to leave. They set up shop, maybe they don't, they drop a mattress. All of those kind of things are subject to change, but the reality is they enter into a property and they have no right to stay there, and yet they refuse to leave.
And obviously this happens all the time in many different scenarios. Like one of the cases, like something we'd be more normal with, like the Shake Shack, it's ridiculous. But like someone coming into your house and just staying here. Like one lady in Queens was inherited her home from her mother. It's vacant, right? Simple as that. And she comes by to check on the property. People are living in it. And that happens here. So like what are our rights as landlords and homeowners here in Arizona?
Yeah, it's interesting. We actually never, I mean, I've been doing this, probably around 18 years now. It didn't start to ever see this even existing until, I mean, people would move in and move out, police would move them. Not the type of thing we've seen since like the recession, really. The Great Recession, it seems like people started moving in and playing more games about what their standing is.
Hmm.
In Arizona, your default legal rights is you can remove somebody from your property until there's some sort of evidence that they're legal and they have set up residency. So if somebody moves in and you've been gone for a month and they've been there for a month and they've set up beds, they've set up toothbrushes, mattresses, all that kind of stuff. I mean, your default remedy is you can call the police, see if the police will remove them. But it's up to the police at that point under Arizona law of whether they want the discretion to physically oust somebody from the property. And what we've always heard back from police is if they've set up residency, they're not going to be physically removed from the property. In which case, at that point, you then have to go through the eviction process. Fortunately for us, the eviction process on those types of demands to a squatter is faster than other states. So we don't have a lot of the same issues that you would in a New York, California, Washington, Oregon, where they hate to go through the courts because you're looking at months no matter what. I mean, here, if your first default is go see if you can physically remove them from the property. If you can't, your next option is to call the police, but it's up to the police's discretion whether they're going to do something. And then third would be then go to the courts. And courts are pretty good about just removing somebody provided that they have no proof that they have a residency or, lease, paying rent, all of those kind of things.
So So especially now, right? So we've been noticing a little slowdown in the rental market. Some rents have dropped. Some your properties are vacant a little bit longer. So maybe something happens. So if someone comes into your property when it's vacant, so it doesn't matter if is there any rights like after 30 days or before 30 days? Is there anything along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, it basically it seems to create some sort of tendency as if they're there over 30 days. I mean, that's definitely more of a problem to get somebody out. It brings in more issues of whether they actually are a valid tenant at that point. Um, if you have vacant homes, I mean, having a smart access, smart controls, cameras to basically see if somebody is breaking into that home it's almost negligent not to do that at this point to protect your own asset. Just because this has been so widely publicized, and I expect more and more people to try it. As you mentioned, the guy on social media that was telling illegals to come here to try and do that and pushing breaking into houses and basically just setting up squatters' rights. Those things kind of catch fire on social media, whether they're right or wrong. So I think smart home technology can help a lot with that. But under the 30 days, you definitely have a stronger position than you would after 30 days in the
True, like
courts as well as in terms of the police.
interesting. So, yeah, as a real estate investor, a good real estate investor, yes, you should be checking on your property and you should not be disappearing for 30 days anyways. So you should be catching this in advance. And I like the smart lock, video cameras, all the technology we have. So you're saying we get in there, we nip it right off the bat, you catch someone in there, you can get them out. Is there anything like, because some people are just like, they just go to that person themselves, especially with drug addicts, especially here in some parts of Phoenix. It's like, what are your rights of just pulling someone out yourself? I know it sounds crazy, but people people do it. People think like that.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the facts. I mean, if it's that first day, I mean, obviously, if you're in, imagine you're just sitting on your couch someday, somebody just walks in your front door, you're pushing them out. I mean, at that
Yeah.
point, you have a right to do so. Um, if they're there though and have set up some level of residency, they're sleeping there, and you just show up one day and try to physically oust them, that's going to create a lot more problems with the police. I mean, you're looking at claims of assault and other things where you unlawfully tried to physically oust them from the property and it puts you in danger. My default in that is for people to, especially if you can prove that they just moved in unlawfully, would be to call the police immediately and see if the police would remove somebody.
God, is there so with the police, what protocols do they have to follow, right? Like you said, if more than 30 days, it could be harder, but like I hear most likely they're not going to remove somebody, right?
If a person's been there for 30 days, I can almost guarantee you the
Yeah.
police aren't going to do anything. They'll simply say it's a civil matter, landlord tenant, you got to go to court and file the eviction. Um, and frankly, I would tell clients right off the bat, if they've been there more than 30 days, you should do that no matter what. It's just start
Yeah.
the eviction process by serving a demand for possession. If it's under 30 days and it's under substantially under that, they do have the discretion to physically just oust somebody as a trespasser. I mean, that exists anywhere, anytime, but it comes down to the discretion of the police. They're going to err on the side of, though, saying it's a civil matter to allow the parties to go to court to judge decide it. If a police officer is sitting there and trying to decide who's telling the truth between the two, they're not, really in the best position to make that decision as to the people's legal rights. So they'll say go to court. If they show up though, and you have proof that as of a day ago the entire property was vacant and you had it on the market, and you have a video of them breaking in, the police will remove them. That's their right to remove them as trespassers. So it's just kind of what kind of credibility you have versus them. But again, you're looking, if they're there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, definitely over 4 weeks, it's going to be harder and harder for a police officer to say, we're just going to remove them physically.
Yeah, I noticed some vacant properties I've had in the past. They always recommended the no trespassing signs with the law on the sign. Does that have anything to do with this, or does that help in any way?
I definitely would help with trespassers. But again, it comes down to the fact it's what the police officer is going to believe then and there. The sign's not going to help in terms of if they've been there 3 weeks,
Yeah, of course.
it's not going to
Yeah.
change anything.
Yeah. So the key here is speed, be on top of your property, know what's going on, check in on it, have someone in on it for you. Uh, Zach Keep says, "What's up, Mark? You're the best in AZ." Uh, Jeff says, "What's up to Zach?" And he recommended a security kit. So thanks, fellas, for being here online with Mark and I.
Hey,
Um,
Zach, how you doing?
awesome, man. So, yeah. So let's as we wrap up, like what happened in Florida, and I think Texas is starting to make some publicity as well. So what did DeSantis do out there?
Yeah, so I think it's big what they did. Obviously, it's a political game in terms of what's going on right now between red and blue states. I'm not going to go too far into what relevant there.
Yeah.
But from a bill perspective of what they did, which Governor DeSantis has signed into law is basically an expedited way for somebody to remove a squatter from their property, right? They saw what was going on in New York and California and other states, saying, okay, this is a concern we have, therefore we're going to address it in the way we think it's appropriate. What that law now does, which is similar to how Arizona acts, but it gives it more teeth that we don't have here. It allows an owner of a property to sign an affidavit basically saying, look, this person's in my property. They have absolutely no right to be here. I'm the owner of the property. The person that's in there is not a family, not related to me in that respect. And they're not a former or current tenant of mine. And provided you're going to sign an affidavit to that effect, the police can rely on that affidavit to come out and physically remove the person. So to address a purely specific squatter situation, even if they've been there for 3 weeks, even if they've been there for 4 weeks, and you just come back from vacation, you find them, that's a great way of doing it. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. You're signing an affidavit, you're attesting to it, and then the police can rely on that. And the good way they did it also is that it limits it. It can't be a former tenant or a current tenant, right? It's not a means to avoid the eviction process and the court process. It's really for somebody that's moved into your property that has no claim to it and is just standing there against your property. And what Florida did in the bill itself is said, like, oh, possession of property is one of the most fundamental parts of property rights.
Yeah.
And we kind of always forget that and don't really think about it, but that is one of the basis of owning property is the right to exclude others from it. And so it gave a means for owners to get their property back faster. And then it gives the police the protection they need as well, because they're relying on that affidavit. So it allows them to take further action to protect people's properties.
Love it. So do you think, like you said, nothing's happening here in Arizona, nothing's changed. We're pretty quick here. Do you think what DeSantis did was, were they similar to Arizona at the time before he implemented this change? Or do
I
you
actually don't know what their status was beforehand. I know their evictions are a little longer than ours, but in terms of the squatters' rights, I don't know.
And you think we here in Arizona can learn from anything he did, or some maybe do you think we should maybe implement something he brought
It
to the
would it
table?
would be great if we could get something like this on the books. There's no question. I mean, this is how laws come about, right? Like
Yeah.
we don't think in historical terms, but the reality is you see people push, then you see the legislature push things, the bills, and eventually the courts actually analyze what's allowed and what's not. And you see that with everything historically that's ever happened. And so this is definitely an issue that's coming up in the news, in social media. So I think it's good for the government to address it because people are going to want a response. And I think their response is definitely reasonable. I just don't see it happening in Arizona right now. One with the timing of um, where we are in the session. Session in Arizona opens up in January and
Okay.
closes, May, June, July, depending on how much is going on. But we're also very split politically right now. So I think it would be very hard to get this type of bill through with the politics that we have going on. So I expect it just won't become an issue here in Arizona, or won't become a bill. Let's put it that way.
Got it. Cool. Well, pretty clear. Any final thoughts on squatters or tips or recommendations for everyone listening?
Be active. I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Like you and I talk about Mike all the time is people that get into owning single family properties, renting out single family properties, you got to know the business, right? You got to take steps to protect yourself, set up the proper entities, set up proper structures. Again, here in this case, smart homes make a lot of benefits to protect you as well. And just do the basics. Go check out your properties. You
There
should
you
never have
go.
a property on the market that's just sitting vacant for a month and you haven't seen it. It's
Yep.
just bad business.
It's so true. All right, perfect. So, also, for those watching and listening, Mark Zinman will be on our fair housing panel Monday, April 8th at venue 8600 in Scottsdale. Mark usually do a nice 20-30 minute presentation for us. This year, we're bringing on the commissioner, Susan Nicholson, Liz Recchia of We Serve, and Aaron Chapman of one of the largest lenders in the country. So it's going to be a great conversation. I'm excited for you to be there. If you want to meet Mark in person, definitely come by the event, check out his booth. Also, how do we get a hold of you if we need any legal services, Mark?
Yeah, best way to always get a hold of us, just give us a call. We're happy to help. It's 480-949-1400. And I do look forward to the panel next week. Better than
Okay.
everybody just having to stuck listen to me. Panel's more interesting to see kind of different perspectives on the issue.
Panels are fun, but you always did great, man.
I
You always
appreciate
had
it.
everyone's attention, man. So appreciate you. I know you're busy, man. Thank you for being here. So that's a wrap for everyone on this squatter session.